Is the 2025 NFL draft overrated at wide receiver or is it underrated at wide receiver? Theo Gremminger joins me for a special edition of Special Guest Saturday here on the Draft Rankings Show. I'm Cody Carpentier. Theo, we're going to talk running backs tomorrow. We're talking receivers right now. This receiver class is known for one player, Tet McMillan from Arizona, a super long athletic freak. There's obviously some viral videos of him making catches in practice. But after that, it seems to have fallen off a little bit. There's some hate for Luther Burden. Isaiah Bond has seemingly fallen out of round one. Emeka Egbuka, as people have kind of fallen asleep at the wheel with Emeka Egbuka coming out of Ohio State. Let's talk about this wide receiver class and why there's still some value to gain from it. Let's start off first and foremost with Tet McMillan. Is this proper? Is where he's being mocked right now in the top 7, top 8 proper? I mocked him to the Las Vegas Raiders this last week. I don't see how he gets out of the top 10, but when I look at him, it's hard. He's like Drake London. It doesn't do it for me.
I think you nailed it, though. He's Drake London, and Drake London went inside the top 10, and Drake London went inside the top 10 in what was considered to be a better on paper wide receiver class than this one, where you also had Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave getting exceptionally high draft capital. For me, I think that Tet McMillan, it's warranted. I think I'm a little bit higher on him than you are, but he's a guy who had great college production, incredible catch radius, and he's also has a combination of a tremendous size, but he's also a guy that can handle a ton of targets. He's not just some big outside X who you use in the red zone. Like, I think he's got a nuanced game that NFL teams are going to like and view him as a potential wide receiver one in this league. So I'm high on McMillan. Back to your initial point, I think that this class has been beat up, Cody. This has been a beat up class. I know that you are extremely high on Luther Burden, and I've been on podcasting with a lot of people recently, and he's a polarizing player in this class. I don't really see it. For me, Burden is an easy top 4 wide receiver in the class and a guy who NFL teams are going to really, really value. But I know you've made the case for him as wide receiver 1 overall in this class. There's others saying that this could be a Treylon Burks situation. I think that, for me, like, if we're projecting Burden to be closer to your projection, then this class is already a better class than like 2023. And therefore, I think we should be valuing these wide receivers a little bit more.
I don't understand that. I heard you bring that up before. I've seen the splatterings of information go across social media about the gadget thought there for Luther Burden at Missouri of the Debos, like you said, Treylon Burks. I don't get it, Theo. I don't get the hate for Luther Burden, a guy that was prolific. His second season at Missouri in 2023 had 1,200 yards. He had 9 touchdowns. He's prolific, and just because he added in what, an average of like 12 carries per year. Like that's called just being dynamic and versatile. That's not like this guy took 35 carries and it limited his wide receiver output. It didn't. What limited Luther Burden's wide receiver output, and no disrespect given here, it was Brady Cook, the quarterback from Missouri. I mean, he competed at the Shrine Bowl this year, and you get to see him in person. You know, what schools struggled at quarterback this year? Missouri, Brady Cook; Auburn, Peyton Thorne; Minnesota, Max Brosmer wasn't that great. Like, those 3 quarterbacks were at the Shrine Bowl this year. And all respect to them. They're going through the pre-draft process. I love it. But it's apparent why receivers like Luther Burden, there's a couple of them up in Minnesota right now, tight ends and receivers. Auburn, Keandre Lambert-Smith had a 900-yard season. Cam Coleman, all these different guys. Bad quarterback play. You look at Oklahoma State, horrible quarterback play to the point where it was like 8, 9 dudes in the box every play against Ollie Gordon. And people are hating on Ollie Gordon. We talk about that, of course, at other times in other shows we have. Luther Burden's hate, though, it makes no sense to me. When you look at this guy, he's not a Debo. He's not a Burks. What I see is a Terry McLaurin. I see the dynamic ability. I see the ability to stretch the field. I see the ability to get in and out of breaks at the stem and excel after the catch and do things of that nature. So I think, there's some Debo, there's some Burks there in the dynamic ability, the speed, the downfield size. I get that. But from the pure, you just want to throw him into the gadget bucket, take a hike.
Yeah, and I think that the NFL is going to tell you that that's a poor assessment of him, because I think when we look at landing spots, like you're projecting Tet McMillan to go 6. I think that's a great potential landing spot. I also think he could go as high as 4. But if Tet falls, Tet's going to go like there's like a 8 to Carolina, Dallas at 12 wouldn't let him pass. And I think once Tet is selected, Luther Burden's in play. And you look at teams like Cincinnati at 17, Atlanta at 15, Dallas at 12, Tampa Bay at 19, Pittsburgh at 21. Like that's the wheelhouse for Burden. And there's no chance he falls past Washington at 29. So now we're already talking about those two guys off the board. Egbuka is a first round wide receiver. Like there's not a chance this guy falls out of the first round. A lot of the teams we mentioned, I think, would be in play for Egbuka. If Chris Godwin does not return to Tampa Bay, I think that would be sort of the nuts landing spot at 19. You also have Houston at 25. So we're already at 3 wide receivers, Cody. And then you start talking about Travis Hunter. Like we could talk back and forth here, but Travis Hunter might be a part-time defensive back and full-time wide receiver on a number of teams' boards. He's that nasty at wide receiver. Then we start talking about these other guys. This is where I think a lot of the strength comes into the class. You talk about Isaiah Bond. What happens if Isaiah Bond shows up to the NFL Combine in Indianapolis and he doesn't go Xavier Worthy, but he runs like a 4.29? I think that's in the wheelhouse. He's an absolute burner. His teammate Matthew Golden also could test very well. That's a guy who teams might value as a first-round pick. Elick Iomanner, I think I have him personally very high up. He's a top 5 wide receiver for me. I think he's a top 40 pick. And then we have the 3 guys who crushed at the Senior Bowl, where you've seen it time and time again, where NFL teams value what guys do at the Senior Bowl. Jack Betch, Jalen Knoll, Jaden Higgins. Some team might already be in love with him in the top 45. And then you have Trey Harris, who a lot of people are on, and Jalen Royals, who a lot of people are on NFL draft boards. So to me, there's too many wide receivers sort of in that mix for high draft capital and a number of needy teams at the wide receiver position. It could end up being a year where the market doesn't recognize how many wide receivers could go inside the top 40 picks. There might be a lot more than we're projecting. So I'm into this wide receiver class, and I think there's value for you in like early best balls and in early dynasty startups to invest in these players.
What I'm hearing from you is I talked to Alex Dunlap yesterday. He told me he thought the wide receiver number should be set at 4.5 for round 1. We've seen years where it's 6.5. 4.5 for round 1 was his number. It sounds to me like you're closer to 5.5. So we think Travis Hunter, Tet McMillan from Arizona, Luther Burden from Missouri, and Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State are 4 hammers for round 1. In your latest mock draft, you have Elick Iomanner from Stanford going 25th to Houston. I have Matthew Golden going in round 1, the Baltimore Ravens. Those would both put us over 5, but like you said, the Isaiah Bond thing enters the conversation. Bond is the clear cut. If he runs sub 4.3, he's going in round 1. That's the one thing here. So the fact that you have Iomanner and I have Golden and neither of us have the opposite, does that mean maybe we should be looking more at that 5.5 number than we should 4.5? And also Isaiah Bond entering that conversation. We haven't even brought up Trey Harris. We got a minute left here, but I just want to get your final thoughts on, is there room enough for Elick Iomanner to actually get up into round 1, and why no Matthew Golden?
Well, I think Matthew Golden and Iomanner to me are sort of in the same wheelhouse. It's sort of who Houston values. Washington at 29 very, very much needs another pass catcher. So much pressure put on Terry McLaurin. I think and then Buffalo, Cody. I went on with our friend Mike Shope to discuss NFL draft, and what Buffalo's done the last few years is James Cook 3 years ago. They draft him out of the second round. You get Dalton Kincaid in the first round, Keon Coleman early second, and their leading receiver this year was Khalil Shakir. So if they think one of these guys is going to push them over the top, the Matthew Golden, Elick Iomanner group is very, very good. And I think that those two guys both athletically can push themselves into the mix. Bond is the wild card. He's a better real life NFL prospect, I think, than fantasy prospect. But the very, very fast guy, especially with the pedigree out of Alabama and Texas, this profile goes in the first round if he runs that fast.
There it is. You can find Theo on Twitter at the OG Fantasy. I appreciate you, Theo, for tapping in. This is the Draft Ranking Show. We appreciate you. We love you. And we'll see you tomorrow.